Yo guys, hey, what's up? It's your boy here, Ken. Back at you again. I want to talk about AEW. Last week, AEW had probably one of their biggest shows in Dynamite history. They had a show in New York City. I forgot the name of the arena. It's one of I think is it called the Astrodome? I think is what it's called in New York City. It's one of the newer arenas in New York City. But anyways, it was a really big week for AEW, both for Dynamite and Rampage on Friday. But the big thing coming out of it was the Daniel Bryan versus Kenny Omega match, and them doing it in front of 20,000 people, the highest attendance in any AEW event ever. So this was a big show. And, I gotta say before I break into, I'm not gonna go into the whole show's detail, but like, I will say this. Coming out of it, for Dynamite at least, Dynamite got a 1.2 rating. It was slightly down from the previous week, which I think was like a 1.3 billion. And a lot of people were like, "Oh man, that's disappointing. That's disappointing." Now you would say, "Hey, having Daniel Bryan in his first AEW match against Kenny Omega, which is a dream match, for most modern wrestling fans, in New York City, 1.2 million viewers or ratings, whatever, 1.2 million. I'm surprised that quite a few people, like podcasters, were like, "Oh, this was so disappointing." I'm just trying to figure out, what did they think AEW was gonna pop for a rating between Kenny Omega between Kenny Omega, Daniel Bryan, being at the New York show, or having a show in New York in front of 20,000 audience. What rating did they think AEW were gonna pop for Dynamite? Were they thinking like 3 million? Because Dynamite wasn't getting that. Were they thinking 1.5? Because Dynamite wasn't getting that. Dynamite getting a 1.2 million viewer rating, I think was good. I mean, was it down from the previous week? Sure, but it wasn't hitting 840,000. It wasn't hitting 900,000 viewers and ratings. If it hit those numbers, if the New York episode of Dynamite hit the numbers that AEW had been hitting in the ratings 6 months before CM Punk came in and Daniel Bryan came into the company, then I'd be kind of worried. But 1.2 million ratings, that's not bad. That's good. Despite the dip from the previous week, I think 1.2 million views was great. So I'll get that out of the way there. And again, I say, as a wrestling fan, I don't care about I don't care about ratings. I don't know why so many wrestling fans are gung ho about it, but I just had to mention that because I just think some people that just looked at that and thought that was just like the worst rating like in that company's history. 1.2 million. Anyways, the New York show. I'll say this in summary. It was a good show. I think it can be, at least for Dynamite, I'll say this. It can be argued that should they had gone with the women's title match main eventing the show versus Bryan and Omega main eventing the show, coming out of it, I would probably say they should have main evented with Daniel Bryan and Omega. But when they kicked off the show with Omega and Bryan, I mean, the crowd, it was hot. I don't know. I don't know if the crowd would have been as hot if they opened. I don't know if the crowd would have been as hot had they placed Omega and Bryan in the main event versus when what they did originally, which was open up the show with those two. But I gotta say, this was an excellent wrestling match. Match of the year contender for sure. This was a match of the year contender. I have to go back and think of some other wrestling matches throughout the year so far I've seen from across other wrestling companies, but this was definitely a contender for sure for a match of the year quality. If it doesn't get match of the year, it's definitely like top 5, top 3 best matches we've seen. I go as far and say best match we've seen on Dynamite, free TV. This was probably the best match we've ever seen. I'd say production wise, AEW looking at this, and AEW's production is good, but really seeing them in this 20,000 seated arena, I mean, it looked big league, it felt big league, and that's not to say that when they do these 5,000 audience in attendance, which they normally do, 5,000 to 6,000 in attendance in smaller arenas, that it doesn't look good on TV. It does look good on TV, and sometimes you don't even realize that it's 5,500 to 6,000 people in attendance. But to really see on a larger scale, it really made AEW say like, man, like this is another level for AEW. For them signing CM Punk, a guy that we thought would never come back after 7 years, to getting Daniel Bryan, who we just saw main event WrestleMania in a high profiling world title match 6 months ago, and to get a free hot acquisition in Adam Cole, and now and to see the presentation of this New York show. This is a statement that AEW are here to play. They're here to play. They are a contender. They are an alternative. And wrestling fans can deny it all they want. I'm not even going to say wrestling fans, but the hardcore WWE fans can deny it all they want. But it is what it is. For long as I've been a wrestling fan for 29 years, I have never seen a wrestling company in my lifetime grow as fast, and not in a scary way, but grow as fast as AEW has in 2 years. When I grew up as a wrestling fan, these wrestling companies were already established. WWE was already established. It had some history behind it. WCW was already a thing. ECW was already a thing. TNA is a wrestling company I've watched grow, and they still exist, surprisingly, as Impact Wrestling, and TNA still exists, but TNA has never reached the level and heights as AEW has in 2 years and all of its tenure. Ring of Honor still has not reached the level of where you would expect an AEW to be in 2 years. I have never seen an upstart company for a wrestling company have the type of financial backing, TV deal, and able to acquire the type of roster that they've acquired within just 2 years. It's incredible. As a wrestling fan, it's exciting to see. I'm going to keep saying it over and over. I wish and hope nothing but the best for AEW. We hear a lot of times from a lot of the wrestlers that the environment, the backstage environment is non-toxic. It's very, I want to say, inclusive. It's all around great. I'm not saying AEW is perfect, because there was some stuff coming out that Brian Cage might be unhappy with some of his booking. That's not surprising, and it wouldn't surprise me if Lance Archer would be joining the conversation either. But I'm just, as a wrestling fan, it's just exciting, and as a fan of AEW, it's just exciting to see. Obviously, Rampage we had on Friday. Rampage was a 2-hour show instead of 1 hour. Good show. I think what really hurt Rampage was that it was taped. I think, occasionally Rampage is filmed live. I think that should have been and maybe, I don't know, because of money for renting out the venue and whatnot. I don't know. They probably had no choice but to shoot everything in one night. Both shows in one night, but I think Rampage would have benefited from being if it were live, because definitely the spoilers were definitely out there. I didn't look at them. I still clear of them, but they were out there. But all in all, Dynamite this past week I thought was awesome. I thought it was a good show. Rampage I thought was good. AEW has made wrestling exciting. My brother, who was a wrestling fan for a long time, didn't watch wrestling in years. Brother-in-law as well. I invited them out to watch All Out pay per view. They saw the All Out pay per view. Well, they had been watching AEW when I mentioned it to them, and they were kind of getting into it a little bit, but that All Out pay per view hooked them, and they've really been in tune with watching it every week since then. And they say like, dude, I haven't been a wrestling fan in years. I haven't watched WWE in years, but AEW has brought me back to wrestling. It's reignited my love for wrestling again. And for a lot of people that say this on the internet, some other people think it's just shit talk. It's legitimate. My own brother-in-law, who say that AEW has reignited their love for wrestling again, they are genuine about that. They're not lying about that. They're not faking the funk. It just goes to show you just how WWE, it pushes their fans away because they're just so. There's nothing wrong with being family oriented. I'm not saying you got to go and be edgy and do off the wall stuff like you did back in the Attitude Era, because that stuff just won't fly today. But don't alienate your audience. And it's like WWE is just for the kids, and it's for the moms and dads and the families. That's their target audience. AEW's target audience is like college age kids, older single dudes from their 20s to 35, whatever. And I think it's I just think it's awesome. AEW is more geared towards a wrestling fan like me, or my brother, or my brother-in-law. Wrestling fans who want to see wrestling. So I just thought that this was a great show, all around, and I look forward to seeing what the future lies for AEW in 2022. You guys let me know what you thought about AEW's Grand Slam week. What were your favorite matches, whatnot? What are your thoughts in the box below? Do yourself a favor, hit that like button, and subscribe. Peace out.